Is an educator's greatest resource. So we're not going to start late. We are just going to get rolling, and maybe a few other people will be joining us along the way. But thank you again for being here. My name is Corey Anderson, and I work for YTRI, the YTRI organization, actually Christian Moore's organization. This is Christian Moore. He's joining us. I'm going to introduce him here in just a moment. Well, let me ask, how you feeling this morning, Christian?
Man, I'm on fire this morning. Got up, had a nice breakfast. Got to spend a little bit of time. I don't usually wake up this early, but I got to spend a little time early in the morning with my wife. So it's a great day. Great day so far. And being on here with you, the legend, is next level.
Oh, dang. Yeah, I mean, just working off of what Christian just shared there. This is, we're sharing this webinar with some of our friends in the central time zone. We're Mountain Time Zone, so we had to get up a little earlier for this one, but happy to be here. Happy to be here. By the way, for those who are tuning in, we would love for you to share in the chat window where you're tuning in from, maybe what your role is. We can see it. I don't think we have it set up that others can see. So, you get to remain anonymous to a certain extent. But yeah, feel free to introduce yourself there as well. Again, my name is Corey Anderson. I have been working in education since 2001, started as a paraprofessional. I was in college at the time, quickly realized I loved education. I loved working with youth. I loved the idea of teaching and learning. And so I changed some courses, went into education, became a teacher. I taught fifth and sixth grade for 5 years before going into administration. I had some colleagues that kind of pushed me in that direction, said you should be an administrator. In hindsight, maybe that wasn't a compliment. I don't know. But regardless, I ended up in administration. And I worked as an administrator for 11 years. 3 years as an assistant principal, 8 years as an elementary principal. And then in 2019, I joined YTRI. It's been quite a run since then. So 5 years with YTRI and been working with educators across the country. And it has been awesome. And now I get to get on this webinar with you with Christian Moore. And I'm so happy that he can be here with us today. I'm glad you're here to hear from him, more from him than from me. But if you are unfamiliar with Christian, Christian Moore is the co-founder of the YTRI organization. But that all began from Christian's backstory and who he is. Christian will share his own story here, but kind of pulling himself out, along with help from others, but pulling himself out of some tough situations, developing resilience along the way to ultimately graduate with a master's degree as an LCSW. He took that experience, started working with kids, learned some things really quickly. One of the great things that I admire about Christian is his ability to ask questions and to question what we do and why we do it, and to try to figure out, should we be doing this another way? And ultimately, that led to the beginning of the YTRI organization. Christian is an author with the Resilience Breakthrough, put that book out about 9 years ago. And what can I say? It's a fantastic book. If you have not seen it, one that you would be very interested in. Christian has flown all over the country. He has spoken, how do I pronounce grammatically? He has given speeches in many places, from the White House to
All 50 states.
universities. What's that?
Oh, in all 50 states.
In all 50 states. There you go. So, and now we just get kind of a close, intimate dialogue with Christian about mental health, resilience, how this really is a link to addressing student motivation and behavior. And yeah, I'm excited to do that. So I am actually, while I will share a little bit later, I'm going to kick this over to Christian and give him an opportunity to start this off. So Christian, I'm going to stop sharing my screen
All
and
right.
give you the opportunity to jump in there.
All right. Hit share screen. All right. All right. Well, thank you for the intro there, Corey. Now, I got to tell you, Corey was actually my kid's principal several years ago. I guess it's probably now, wow, over almost 20 years ago. But me and Hans, my business partner, saw his skills, his passion for children and families dealing with difficulties, understanding the whole child, student mental health. Corey was the real deal. So we begged him to come over here to why try. So it really is an honor. And I always tell people I'm the hot air. Corey literally has gotten these tools to many, many kids and families across the country. He's one of our top trainers, and he flies a lot doing this work as well. So, people always ask me, you're the author of this book, The Resilience Breakthrough. I just found out from Greenleaf, our publisher, we have over 100,000 copies now in print, which blew me out of the water. And people always want to know, I don't know if I can read your whole book, but just give me the core number one key ingredient that it takes to be resilient. If you had to summarize it in just a few words, Christian, what do I need to have to be resilient? And I always tell people, resilience is the ability to bounce back. So you got to have something to bounce back from. So resilience has never, ever, ever showed up without some type of suffering, some type of difficulty, opposition. I'm going to walk you through a formula today. Me and Corey are going to go back and forth. I'm going to walk you through a model for resilience that you can teach all students to really impact student motivation and behavior. And so, again, that first step is suffering. Just to kind of illustrate this human condition of suffering, I always like to start out with this quick little video clip. It has my favorite song that goes with suffering. A few of you may have heard this song before. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. It just popped up. Okay, let me go one more time. Let me go back. Wow, this thing's going all over the place. Hold on. Come back. Come back. There we go. All right. Here we go. Here we go.
It's hard knock life for us. It's a hard knock life for us. Gotta treat it, we get strict. Santa kisses, we get kicked. It's a hard knock life. It's a hard knock life. It's a hard knock life. Never wanna see you kid. Gotta turn it. Send it to the wind.
All right. So, I've been on this earth for about 54 years. There's never been a time in my life I haven't had some type of difficulty, frustration, challenge. So one thing I try to say to myself every day is, look, I've been on this earth for 54 years. I know there was challenges in the past, there's challenges in the present, and there's probably going to be challenges in the future. So I say to myself, how do I use that challenge as a reason to be motivated to not give up? I call that flipping the switch, is where you say to yourself, how do I use this difficulty as a resource? And I'll go into a little bit more depth on that in a minute. But I want to start out by sharing my story of resilience, how I got interested in this, and what literally took me over 7 million miles across America, around the world. So here is my story. I grew up in between Baltimore and DC in a family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Both my parents had some mental health challenges. My mom had social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to go get food. So there wasn't a lot of food to eat sometimes in my house growing up. Don't tell anyone, but my dad was one of the highest level code breakers at the National Security Agency. You could give my dad any mathematical problem and he could instantly rattle it off the top of his head. My dad was autistic. He was a genius, but he had very little common sense or social skills. If you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, you've met my dad. So having 2 parents with some mental health challenges put me in a situation where I ended up being a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night, had very few rules, very few boundaries. One night, I was out late at night and a car pulls up and I hear a voice. And the voice I hear is the voice of a woman who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. It was one of my best friend's moms who sees me out there, late at night.
Christian had so many obstacles that was going on in his home.
She knows what I'm out there doing, and she says, look, don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm gonna call the school tomorrow. I'm gonna make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes. I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again.
When you see a child that's hungry, there's no happiness there. You're thinking about what other kids have.
Going to school was very difficult for me. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. When I was sitting in a classroom, oftentimes, I was embarrassed. When I got called out loud, I would act up and get in trouble instead of, embarrassing myself because I didn't know how to read or didn't know how to do basic math. So, you know, for me, it was like going to the doctor's office every day, going to school. You know, I had a hard time telling time when I was even 17 years old. I couldn't tell time on a hand clock. To me, 4:45 equals 25 minutes to 5, but they tell me 1/4's 15.
When we concentrate on that more to make sure that a child's needs are provided for, then that child will thrive. I know that I'm loved, and I know that this person is going to feed me.
Mama Jackson took over and said, look, if you start going to school every day, I want to see your report cards. If you start answering to me, you can come eat in our house anytime you want. Now, Mama Jackson was a seriously, seriously good cook. That's one of the reasons why I'm in top physical condition right now. But anyways, I was very blessed to have Mama Jackson come into my life. It was kind of an informal foster care situation. She took over and really started giving me skills of resilience, had a huge impact on my life. And I'm excited to share with you all the different skills and strategies that Mama Jackson gave me to help me become resilient.
One of his teachers in high school said to him that he would never go to college. Christian went to college.
Growing up in between DC and Baltimore, I saw many social problems in my community, in my neighborhood. You know, I saw poverty, I saw hopelessness at times. I even saw some violence. But I remember walking to school one morning and literally seeing one of my best friends evicted from his house. His furniture was all throughout his front yard. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, his parents' eyes. And I knew in that moment, I wanted to be a social worker. And I knew I could not become a social worker unless I went to college. You know, but I was told college was probably not going to be an option for me with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. You know, statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James.
His experience was at the other side of the track. Life was different. Life was unique. And the kids like that, they have to survive.
I struggled getting through college math. You know, college math is a requirement to make it through school. I remember that feeling in my stomach when I knew I couldn't graduate.
They're not going to let me graduate because I can't do math. I can't count money, I can't numbers, I get confused and all of these things. He was like a bobcat in a cage.
So I came up with something called the No F game plan. And this was a strategy that I used to make it through school with my learning differences.
He made himself big. He made himself known to others. I'm here. Hey, I may not have what you have, but I have a street smart.
I would go to every class. I would sit on the front row. I would do all the homework assignments. And I would do enough extra credit to get a D-. I would shoot for A's, but I learned in college you get just as much credit with a D-.
And his paper is not polished. Other students get an A. Christian gets B, sometimes a C. But he has ideas. He has a substance. And the Why Try program that he ran with, and helped incredible number of students and the teachers and administrators, came out of a classwork.
He created an environment to teach teachers how to really deal with students that may have significant functional limitations.
I persevered. Luckily, I knew what resilience was. I knew how to take my academic challenges and use them as a reason to knock down barriers, to focus on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me.
The vision of Why Try, and I think this thing is called the roller coaster ride. And I'm so glad that when he fell off of that roller coaster, that he got back on.
Dr. Virgil Wood, civil rights icon and close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King, learned about Why Try's impact and decided to honor Mama Jackson with the National Rosa Parks Save the Children Award. Mama Jackson gave me a safe and loving environment so I could thrive. She didn't get rid of my problems at home at school in my neighborhood. She showed me how to use those problems as a fuel source to put one foot in front of another and create a productive outcome with the opposition. Despite my many challenges, I was able to get a master's degree with a 6th grade math level and a 7th grade reading and writing level, and become a licensed clinical social worker. As a social worker, I was able to see the challenges that I faced growing up from a completely... Because the time, I'm going to cut that just a little bit short. But you can see I had some incredible people come into my life, from those professors to Mama Jackson, you know, my current wife, Wendy, I've been married to for 33 years. When I was in college, she read all my textbooks to me, typed up all my papers. She was absolutely amazing, helping me get through school. So you can't see this, but from, you know, you can't see Corey though, but you see there's an army of people behind me right now that enabled us to reach over 3 million kids across the country. Did not do this in isolation. But a professor you saw there, Dr. Seipel, comes to me in college and says, look, Christian, do me a favor. Just write down for me on a piece of paper, how did you make it this far in school with your learning differences, your background? So I just wrote down a few principles on a piece of paper. I wrote down, I had to realize my decisions had consequences. You know, the name of our program is Why Try, because we want students to know if they try in life, they'll get more opportunity in life, more freedom, more self-respect. So this is just a roller coaster that shows the ups and downs of life. To get on that other track right there to opportunity, freedom, not the one that goes real high or real low and crashes, but just that other track that goes up and down. To get that opportunity, freedom, self-respect, we want them to be able to tear off their labels. You know, when I first work with students, they have many of these labels right here: failure, druggie, learning disabled, dumb, lazy, rebellious, attitude problem. We want to really help them tear off those labels, focus on what's right with themselves, not what's wrong with themselves. When I was in a classroom teaching, one way I did this is I would polka dot the door frame, I'd candy stripe it. When kids would walk into the classroom, I'd say, hey, when you come into my classroom or my office, I'm going to only focus on what's right with you. You can go talk to another counselor about what's wrong with you. You can go talk to the vice principal, but when you're with me, I'm only going to focus on what's right with you. And kids love to be in an environment like that. We know that has a huge impact on student motivation. So we want to help them tear off the labels. You know, I had to learn how to control my defense mechanisms. And this is something I have to work on every day. You know, the teacher would say to me, Christian, turn to page 130 and read out loud. I didn't know how to read. So I swear at the teacher, punch the kid next to me, because I'd much rather be sent to the principal's office for acting out behaviorally. This next picture here is what we call the motivation formula. I look at life's problems being like water. Water can flood and do damage, or water can be channeled through dams and create electricity. You know, we have to drink enough water to stay alive. You know, we're made up of 90% water. But again, too much water can cause tremendous damage. So I look at life's problems. I look at opposition, difficulty the same way. It can be used as a fuel source. It can be channeled, or we can use it in ways that hurt ourselves and others. This is a tribute to my home state of Maryland. If you put a bunch of live crabs in a pot, if you don't put a lid on the pot, why can't the crabs get out of the pot? The kids will say, well, the other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're fighting with, you're doing drugs with, all they're doing is they're pulling you down. They're keeping you in the pot. You know, what are the reasons for staying in the pot? What will my future be like when I get out of the pot? You can see every question that the teacher, the counselor, the administrator asks the student is written around the visual picture. And then we reinforce the picture with music and physical activities. And Corey will go into more depth with you on that. But our main goal here, and why we made everything visual and again reinforced it with music activities and lots of art activities, is relevancy. We wanted to make sure what we're doing is relevant, especially to the student who's coming to school with no paper, no pencil, no notebook, totally disengaged from the academic process. You know, this current generation spending between 30 to 40 hours a week engaged with media. So everything we do, we use a multimedia approach, because we want to really start where that student is. We want to start where that child is for that relevant, component. This next one here is what we call jumping hurdles. We just have the student put in whatever challenge they're dealing with, and then we just walk them through a very simple problem solving model. They have to identify the problem. They got to create options. They got to get help. They got to take action. They got to jump back up. And my favorite one is believe in change. It says on a scale from 1 to 10, circle where you are and believing that change will happen. If the student says anything below a 5, I'll spend the next couple weeks helping them believe that change is possible, because if you don't think change is going to happen, you're not going to put a lot of effort in. And when you're younger, you think whatever emotion you're feeling, whatever challenge you're feeling is going to stay stagnant. As adults, we know that's very, very temporary. That change is nothing. Life is nothing but change, really. As you get older, you understand that. And then the next one here is a maze. It takes them 20 minutes to get through this maze. I'll say to get through this maze, you had to have the desire to do it. You have to put the time in, you have to put the effort in. When I was in school, I would spend all this time drawing mazes. A little funny side note. One day, someone took a ruler and measured. When I hand draw a maze, it is the exact distance between the black lines on the maze, because I spent thousands of hours drawing mazes as a kid. So it's a little funny side note there. But I'll say, look, to get through this maze, you have to have the desire to do it. You have to put the time in. You have to put the effort in it. It's hard work. Sometimes I'll be speaking to thousands of students and I'll say, what would take you further in life, hard work or being smart? And they'll usually be like, being smart. And then I'll spend the next hour teaching them that actually in America, hard work will take you much further than just academic smarts. I tell the kids, you have both. You're smart and you can be hard working. I wasn't the sharpest cookie in the drawer. Anyway, sharpest, you know what I'm trying to say. So anyways, that's my built-in joke. What are you laughing at, Corey? Come on, man.
I wasn't so sure it was built in, so it came off really well.
Oh man. Then they have to this one, they got to lift the weight. They got to lift society's laws and rules. They've got to get plugged into a support system. We first work with students, they have one or less of these often: a parent or caregiver, a positive friend, teacher, counselor, school official, something that inspires and motivates them to do good. One of the great things that came out of COVID is the debate is over. We just did a worldwide study on the importance of connection and relationships. So we know human beings are social creatures. They need that connection. They need those relationships. And this really focuses on how to tap into that. And then the last picture here kind of sums it up. Often when we're first working with students, they're standing here, next to this wall. All they can see is failure, maybe substance abuse issues, anger, academic issues, anxiety, depression, different family problems. And when you're dealing with those issues, you have a hard time answering that question, why try? Why should I, turn in my homework, put effort into life? But our goal is they learn how to stop crashing and so on, then get on top of that wall and see opportunity, freedom, and self-respect. So that's kind of a quick, kind of nutshell, quick version of what we did and how we got started. So these skills, these are skills of resilience. And then Corey's going to share with you kind of how to apply some of this. And then I'm going to jump back on and share with you where resilience comes from internally. And because we can teach skills all day long, but we also have to have that internal resilience. So here is the great Corey. I'll turn this over to you.
Sounds good. Yep.
All right. You hit stop share. All right.
Awesome. I'm just going to flip to my PowerPoint really fast. Should be sharing now. Hopefully you guys can see that. So I asked Christian to get on here and share the beginning of the Why Try organization, how it led to where it is today. Mainly because not only is Christian and this organization kind of leaders in mental health and teaching it in school settings, but really, our approach in how we make this happen is key to students and children developing these skills. And really at its crux, it's how we address student motivation and behavior. Why Try is brought in many times to address student motivation and behavior by teaching these skills to kids. And I want to be very clear that what we're about to show you is while we are obviously sharing a lot about the Why Try organization, our approach can be done by someone not necessarily even using Why Try. Now, we have toolkits, obviously, that we have created and that you may be interested. Maybe some of you currently do use them. But the bottom line is that this approach that Christian has developed to working with students is at its core of just a great way of working with kids. And it helps you learn how to work with difficult students that put up lots of walls and to address that student motivation and behavior. We do have this approach that all of this is built on. We call it the 3 R's. 3 R's is an acronym that is used across several different instances. But for us, it's simply this. if I want to teach the skills of resilience, then I have to create the right relationship with students, and I have to make what I'm doing with them relevant. And if I can do that, then I can guide them through a learning process to help them develop the skills of resilience. And in reality, this is going to help them develop both skills of resilience, and once you start going down that road, you can address things like motivation and behavior. But this isn't just about being aware that relationship is important and that relevance is important. The real question is, how do I do this? I know that everybody, all educators across America know that relationship is like this big part of what they do. And they know that it's important for kids to understand why something's important before they will ever engage. The real question becomes, so how do I do that? What does that actually look like? And I think, a lot of times we talk about the fact that these things are important, but we really don't dive into how to do it. And so that's what is great about this approach and what has been developed here. The Why Try approach, I know there's a lot going on the screen in front of you, but this really is what we are all about and how we address the things that students need. That left column are the stuff that we use. And this is how we engage students in a way that they like to learn, how we try to tap into different learning styles. And so just like Christian was sharing, we use visual metaphors, we use activities, we use video media, we use music, we use interactive journaling and interpersonal learning experiences. We use picture books, our stories, our students' stories. All of that makes it so much more meaningful. And when we engage students that way, they start to embark with us in this learning process where they feel like they are more almost collaborating on these things that we are learning together, and their motivation towards what you are doing with them completely changes. And no longer does it feel like it's something that's being done to them. Rather, it is learning that is taking place with them, and they become kind of masters of that. That middle column, those are the skills that we really focus on. And a lot of these impact relationship in a big way. And I don't have time to go through all of these right now. As Christian would say, that's a whole other workshop. But the bottom line is these things make a big difference in building relationship. You will see those top three: surrendering to one up, framing, and questions and processing, right? Those are all things that we do to build relationships with our students. And all of that can help us develop these skills, help our students develop these skills of resilience, which helps them find success and opportunity in whatever setting they're in, including school, which can have a huge impact on their motivation, on their behaviors, and things like that. Christian, he shared some slides specific to the Why Try program. And one of the things I love about using visual metaphors is that it helps students make connections between really abstract ideas and something simple and easier to see and understand, right? So decision making is super abstract. If you ask your students, hey, draw me a picture of decision making, you may have some creative, clever students that come up with something, but a lot of your students are going to be like, I don't even know what you're asking here. You ask a student to draw a picture of a roller coaster, and they can probably whip something out pretty quickly because they have some ideas and easier to understand background knowledge on roller coasters. So we take these visual images and help develop vocabulary and understanding that allow us to facilitate these really great conversations with kids and help them become collaborators in this learning process. So as Christian was showing off, we have these series of visual images that we use with students. Christian showed our base 10, like this is the core. We have these 10 core metaphors. We've expanded on those, and we have now developed them into a series of metaphors that we use with students to build layer upon layer, deeper understanding about all of these concepts. And it becomes a really an engaging and fun way to interact with our students and to help them kind of develop skills that, quite frankly, we're still developing as adults as well. And so it can be almost this collaborative learning process where you're both kind of taking something away from the experiences that you have. And, we don't have time to go deep into all of these right now, but to give you an idea, let me grab one. You know, one that is very popular. Christian brought up the weightlifter. You know, we have one about lift the weight, which is all about responsibility and expectations. You know, that core metaphor that Christian created called lift the weight is this idea that resistance pushes against you. But if you are willing to lift that resistance, it builds muscle, it builds your capacity for taking on more responsibility and expectations. Great idea, great concept. How do we build upon that layer upon layer? Well, in the younger ages with younger children, let's start simple. We're going to use guidelines that kind of help us get from one place to another in a safe way. So we use this rope bridge. And, you know, we introduce the idea that rules and routines help us start our day and get to the end of the day in a safe way, just like the rope guides on that bridge. Then we take a kite, and, you know, a kite may seem like this simple thing where this kite line is holding that kite back. But the truth of the matter is that if you cut the string to that kite is going to come crashing down. It may fly away for a moment and go higher, but it's going to ultimately crash to the ground. So that kite line, the thing that you may think is actually holding it back, it's not. It's actually helping it soar higher and higher and reach its maximum potential at that time. And so the question becomes, what are some things in your life that kind of feels like it's either holding you back, or are these things that, you know, are holding you in place, but in reality, they're helping you be more successful. And it's a great way of highlighting the importance of rules and routines and expectations that we have. From there, we go to a weightlifting wall where we introduce the idea of resistance for the first time, and how if we're willing to use resistance as a way to build muscle, we can really develop our own capacity for taking on responsibility and expectations. So we do some really cool things with metaphors to engage students in a learning process where it's not just being done to them, where it's not just sage on the stage, let me tell you about your life, but instead we can engage them in a way where they're going to be a lot more open to embarking in these lessons. Now, these are specific skills, and these skills help any individual, adult or a child, learn to recognize that whatever challenges they have in their life, as they had put these skills into place, they have a much better chance of seeing success for themselves, seeing opportunities, and seeing a vision of the future. These skills are great. However, you know, Christian, after he developed a lot of this why try, these core concepts, started to go down a new road of just as he was explaining there, internal resilience. And so I'm going to actually give Christian an opportunity here to share a little bit more about that. What you mean, Christian, by these internal sources of resilience, and share about that. You ready for that?
Yep.
Okay, let me stop sharing my screen and turn this over to you. You're good to go.
All right. All right. Hit share screen. All right. Thank you, Corey. Sharing all that. Oh, that should pop up there. All right. All right. Well, me and Corey sure appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day to let us speak to you. Again, like Corey was saying, we know how busy you guys are. And so I want to share something really, really important with you, something that's had a huge impact on my life. And I've seen impact literally hundreds of thousands of people across the country. And that's when people learn where resilience comes from internally. You know, like Corey said, all these other skills we've taught, these are skills of resilience, you know, hard work, determination. Your decisions have consequences, how to tear off your labels, how to, you know, apply hard work, how to deal with peer pressure, how to get plugged into a support system. Those are skills that increased our resilience. But as I was, you know, I taught these skills for years, over 20 years across the country, and lots of educators would say to me, hey, Christian, kids understand your 10 visual metaphors, the music, the physical activities, but where does the inner motivation come from to really apply these skills? Because, you know, sometimes kids keep crashing on the reality ride. They're having a hard time tearing off their labels. So I started developing a model. I started paying attention to people with high trauma that were thriving. Most of my career as a social worker, I worked with people with high trauma who were hurting themselves and others. But I wanted to know, hey, this other population, again, where mom's in prison, dad's an alcoholic, they're dealing with tremendous social problems, tremendous trauma. What are they tapping into? And we kept seeing four things pop up over and over, something called relational resilience, street resilience, resource, and rock bottom. I'm going to go into those in depth in just a moment, but I want to kind of frame this. So the first thing you have to be resilient, you have to have suffering. The second thing I already talked about a little bit about flipping the switch. When that suffering kicks in, you're going to have negative emotions, and you have to ask yourself, how do I use that anger, that sadness, those negative emotions in productive ways? That's part of flipping that switch. The third thing we want students to do is understand what we call the battery. And I'll say, look, to charge a battery, can you charge a battery with just a positive connection? They'll say no. I'll say, can you charge a battery with a negative connection? They'll say no. I'll say, the battery charges because the positive and the negative come together. For example, for me being here right now, speaking to you all today, if it was dependent on those emotions on the left, just positive emotions, I wouldn't be here speaking. You all heard my life story in that video. I'm here because Mama Jackson, some amazing mentors, showed me how to create a productive outcome with my negative emotions. And what I started realizing several years ago is there's no law in the universe that says you cannot take a negative emotion and create a productive outcome with it. And if you think about it, you have twice the fuel source to bounce back to overcome opposition, pain, and suffering. If you can if you can use both your positive and negative emotions, you have twice the fuel source to bounce back. Again, if you have to wait for positive emotions to show up, you're actually at a resilience disadvantage. But, I spent 8 years in college, $65,000, getting all this education, but they only really taught me positive psychology. If you go to Barnes & Noble, go to the self-help section of the bookstore, almost every book's going to teach the same thing. What you say to yourself is going to lead to your actions. It's going to lead to your behaviors. So you probably just want to say positive things. But when I started studying families and children with high trauma, again, if you have high trauma, you're going to have tons of negative emotions. And we noticed all of them would share stories and anecdotes and talk to us about how they created a productive outcome with those negative emotions. And it's also what makes us human. If we didn't have sadness, hurt, anger, regret, loneliness, we may as well be AI. We'd be a robot. We'd be a machine. It's actually the birthplace of humanity. It's what's most special about us is the fact that we mess up, we make mistakes, we have negative emotions. That is as normal as breathing. We have 40 to 60,000 different emotions during the day. Some of those emotions are going to be positive. Some of those emotions are going to be negative. And that, again, the ability to maximize both gives you a huge resilience advantage. So again, this is a model. The first thing you have to be resilient. You have to have suffering. The second thing you have to do is flip that switch. Ask yourself how to use that suffering as a resource. The third thing we want them to tap into is this battery right here to maximize both their positive and negative emotions. And then we want them to tap into these four sources of resilience. So the first one is something called relational resilience. And this just means you go through the motions, you don't give up because another person needs you and you need them. It's that interdependence. There's a picture of my two kids, Cooper and Carson, who Corey was the great principal for these kids. The one on the left there, Cooper, is graduating in about a year from the University of Utah in film, going to go into film school. He's going to use media to impact this world. And Corey was his great principal. So I got to pay respect to Corey there. And that's my son, Carson, there on the right. You see a little smirk on his face. He got dad's conduct disorder, so I got to try to keep Carson out of prison. So he's more like me. But anyways, but no, they're both amazing kids. They're a lot older now. But when COVID hit and I wasn't invited to speak anymore, everything slowed down. What motivated me to continue to make a living, to not give up during COVID, were those two kids right there. So again, the more people that need you and you need them, your inner motivation to bounce back, to be resilient goes up. And again, we know because of COVID, we're highly social creatures. We need each other. Mama Jackson was that relationship for me. That's me and my Washington Commanders coat there. During, I guess that was probably about 1978, I would say, right there. And this Mama Jackson, my brother Sean. And so, what Mama Jackson did for me to increase my resilience, I cannot even put into words. One of my favorite examples of relational resilience is Harriet Tubman freed over 200 slaves on the Underground Railroad. I went to a museum the other day in Maryland. In my Maryland history books growing up, they didn't really tell us the real story. The the Underground Railroad, went through Southern Maryland. And at her museum, they explained that the slaves would want to turn back around. They would hear the dogs coming towards them in the woods. They'd see the lights coming towards them. The real story is she actually had a shotgun, and she'd explain to them, if you turn back around, we're all going to get captured. And for some reason, none of them turned around. And, why did she go to that extreme? She knew at what level they needed her, and she needed them. And that was a powerful, powerful motivator. She's also the grandmother of my profession, social work. Jane Addams is the mother of social work, who started the Whole Houses in Chicago. But she started the first retirement homes for African Americans in Philadelphia and did some of the first organized social work. So this is the grandmother of social work, and Jane Addams is the mother. So if any social workers out there listening, I always like to share that. Because of time, I gotta skip a couple of these here because of time here. I guess Rick and Dick Hoyt ran in over 240 triathlons together. He says, if I had more time, I would show you this clip, but he says at the end of the clip, what really made a difference in these 240 races is, he said, each one of these races, something came from his body to my body. He said that inspired me, that caused me to push through. And today we know what that is he's talking about. That's that relational resilience. And you don't have to be born with this. We can literally teach relational resilience. The second place that resilience comes from internally is something that I teach called street resilience. And that's where you use any type of pain, disrespect, social inequality. Again, we live in a world that has tremendous opposition. Human beings, man, will disrespect each other over shoe size, weight, height, your hairline's receding too much. I don't know, man. Human beings always come up with a reason to be one up, to be superior, to disrespect one another. And the ability to take that disrespect and use it as a fuel source was very common. We looked at lots of families with lots of trauma, especially first generation college students and stuff. We saw, hey, a lot of them said, hey, I was told I couldn't do this. College wasn't an option for me. People judged me because of my background, my culture, the community I came from. And we would see this over and over again. They always talked about using that disrespect in productive ways and positive ways. You reframe obstacles into opportunities, limitations into possibilities. I had a professor who came to me in college and said, Christian, if you can get a college degree, my degree's worth less. I literally walked off that college campus in tears. About 9 years later, that professor was teaching out of 2 college textbooks. We were in the Introduction to School Social Work textbook, is evidence-based RTI, PBIS. So he had to actually lecture on my theories, the same professor that said you shouldn't be here. Now you might say, hey, Christian, I know Corey's laughing at me going, why are you bragging right now, Christian? I always say, look, it may seem like bragging, but it's really street resilient. When someone tells you can't accomplish something and you use that disrespect, you use that hate, that is street resilience. There will always be people judging you on this planet. And again, I've been on this earth for 54 years. There's never been a time in my life that, somebody isn't a little bit upset with me or they're judging me. And to come back to that judgment with love, with motivation, is one of the most powerful, powerful things in the world. Rosa Parks refusing to sit on the back of the bus. Powerful example of that. Mandela, Cesar Chavez, powerful, powerful example. I love this story. We know that he unionized the migrant farm workers. And my favorite story is they had these huge trucks in the middle of the fields with these big barrels of water, massive amount of water in these barrels. And they were charging like 50 cents for a cup of water. And he just said, that's not okay. He tapped into that street resilience, and the rest is history. When I travel to America, almost every major city in America has Cesar Chavez Lane because of his street resilience. So many examples, what Gandhi did, what Malala did. She shot by the Taliban. She said, until the man shot me, we know she got the Nobel Peace Prize because she said, until the man who shot me, the man who tried to take my life, she found out his daughter did not have the opportunity to receive an education. And she said, I'm going to speak out until his daughter has an opportunity to receive an education. And we know the rest is history. Now, hundreds of thousands of young women around the world are receiving an education because of Malala's street resilience. You do not have to be born with relational resilience. We can teach that to children. We can teach street resilience to children. When I was in college, there was a big debate years ago when I was in college, and they would say, well, either you have resilience or you don't have resilience. You can't hand somebody resilience on a silver platter. And the reason why I'm so fired up right now in this workshop is because we know, me and Corey know, resilience is a learned skill. And this is why education is the most powerful thing on the planet. It's because it's through learning, it's through access to information that we can learn. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest social justice issues you're going to see go on in the next 10 years is millions of kids across this country are starting to get evidence-based resilience, and millions of kids are not. And I'll be really frank with you guys. I know we're speaking in the Midwest right now. We're in Nebraska, Iowa, Oklahoma. We do tons of work in California, on the East Coast, the West Coast, down in Texas, the South. But be really frank with you guys, we don't do as much work in your part of the country. So, hey, if kids all across this country are getting access on the coast and the South, we got to make sure every child in the great states of Nebraska, Iowa, and Oklahoma are getting access to evidence-based resilience. And if I was in the room with you all, I would be yelling right now, can I get an amen? And again, I've spent time in all those places, and I know how special. I know you guys are the salt of the earth. And it's interesting, Corey, I'm talking about resilience. And I've traveled a lot. I've traveled 7 million miles across this country. I want to just take a moment to know, I do know where I'm speaking. And I do know your communities, the people in all 3 of those states are some of the most resilient people in this country. The whole country knows how resilient people are in your communities. You guys are tremendous examples there. And especially, I'm a big fan of Iowa, and man, Iowa is a highly resilient state. The history of Nebraska is an incredible resilient state. And hey, in Oklahoma, man, that state with those rolling hills and the history of ruggedness in Oklahoma is no joke. And so I do catch my own hypocrisy, lecturing in these states on resilience, because you guys, all joking aside, the history in all of your states is nothing but resilience. But we've got to make sure all these kids get access to evidence-based resilience. And then the last place that resilience comes from is, Michael, I just had a little clip there. Michael Jordan, he gets cut from the JV basketball team. Everybody knows what he does with that disrespect of getting cut. And then the next one is resource resilience. And that's where you maximize your talents, your abilities, your resources that you have. For example, I had 2 skills growing up. I could talk nonstop and I could draw really good. I took everything in mental health, made it visual, and I continue to talk nonstop. I think my time's up. I should be passing this off to Corey right now, but I talk nonstop. And so we good, Corey? I give it 2 more minutes. And then, so resource resilience is, again, it's the ability to tap into the resources and systems, from the community. And you can see this library right here. The greatest gift, on my iPhone, I literally can access the whole world on my iPhone. And one thing I like having Corey is a problem solver, and why try? And Corey is not afraid to go out and get data, get information. I mean, sometimes we all bury our heads in saying we're scared of reality sometimes, and what do we need to do to fix things and stuff. And Corey is a great example to me of resource resilience. The guy has no fear. He will look the data in the eye and bring it to us and try to fix things. But that has a huge impact. So I mean, talk about you personally here, Corey, but that's what makes Corey an incredible human being. He's not afraid to access resources around him. And I think that really makes him thrive. You can use and develop your talents, your personality traits. Again, my resources were nonstop speaking and mental health and drawing. Helen Keller, everybody knows the story of Helen Keller, just maximizing those limited resources she had. She did some incredible things. One of my favorite examples is Kyle Maynard, born with no arms, no legs, literally hiked. He put rubber balls in the end of his stubs there and crawled to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And one thing I learned from Kyle Maynard, I had the opportunity to speak at several conferences with him. Resilience is not a destination. He wasn't resilient when he was on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. The resilience took place in the climbing of Mount Kilimanjaro. It took place in the crawling and the cutting himself up and sliding backwards. Resilience takes place in striving. I wrote a book on resilience. I'm supposed to be one of the top experts in resilience in the country. I'm telling you, I've never hit resilience. I've never reached the destination of resilience. Resilience is an effort effect. The resilience is born and grown in the movement, in the pushing forward. because of time, I'm going to just go through these real quick. And the last one is rock bottom resilience, and that's at your lowest moment. You believe in your ability to flip that switch. You believe in your ability to say to yourself, how do I use this rock bottom moment to keep pushing through? You know, one of my favorite pictures is the one picture there in the middle, right there on that home screen there, of the lady during the Great Depression, that Dorothy Lang picture. You know, 6 months after that picture was taken right there, her kids were still sick. She still had challenges. They still were living in poverty, but she didn't go on shutdown. You can see that grit. You can see that perseverance, that resilience in her face. I don't even have words in the English language to describe that. The next picture you see there on the right is my good friend Daryl Scott from Rachel's Challenge. You know, his daughter was the first girl killed in Columbine, and he's reached millions and millions of kids and families. And right there, I took that picture, and he turned to me and said, Christian, the greatest gift is to be able to take pain and channel it in productive ways. That's what he said to me right after I took that picture right there. When you see that, and it's interesting, Solution Tree just picked up a thing. Me and Aaron Gorell from Freedom Riders and Daryl, we're going to be doing a book on mental health together. And you know, all of us get this opportunity because of these rock bottom moments, the ability to say, because of this pain, because of this suffering, we're going to try to become more loving. We're going to become more forgiving. And by the way, one of the biggest things that kills our resilience is when our head hits the pillow at night. If we beat ourselves up, if we focus on what's wrong with ourselves, our resilience goes down. We have to give ourselves self-grace. We have to forgive ourselves for every mistake we made during that day when our head hits that pillow. Because if we don't have the desire to bounce back. We don't have the desire to put one foot in front of another. And so we have to give ourselves that grace first, that self-grace. That's the last chapter in the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for listening to me. I want to turn the time over to Corey to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with us. All right, Corey. Hey, thanks for the hearts. I appreciate the hearts. I appreciate it, you guys. Nothing but love.
Yeah. Hey, Christian, thank you. You're turning that over to me.
Yep. Let me get the, all right. There we go.
Awesome. Hey, yeah, Christian, I love listening to Christian, his enthusiasm, his passion. It is infectious, to say the least, and I'm sure you guys can feel that. I'm going to wrap things up here. If you'll stick around with me for 5 more minutes, I want to give you a few freebies and takeaways from this. Christian went through and shared with us the sources of resilience, which is great. I think you guys hopefully have got a feel of what our message is. Our message is that there really are some creative and wonderful ways of working with students to help them develop the skills of resilience, understand their own sources of resilience and how they can build those up. And we teach and do all of this through an approach that helps us address student motivation and student behavior. We try to engage them in ways they like to learn. We use certain skills and strategies to build relationships. I named a couple of those, and I'm going to end with that there. I mentioned surrendering the one up, framing, using questions and processing, things like that. We have 3 toolkits, and you can easily take this approach and use the resources you have at your own disposal and use those to work with students. We have our own toolkits that we build out, and I'll put a link here at the end that if you're interested in those, I am more than happy to jump on and go through what those look like with you in some sort of Zoom meet. But our 3 toolkits we offer, we have the Why Try toolkit that we offer, the Resilience for Youth toolkit, where we dive into these sources. And as Christian was speaking, I just love listening to and thinking about the interactions you can have with kids as you use real world examples, you use examples in the lives of your students to really detail out the sources of resilience. So really cool stuff there. And then the last thing we offer actually is a toolkit for leadership teams that they can use with their colleagues on how to build relationships. Because quite frankly, building relationships, it's not easy to build a relationship with every single student you are working with at all times, because they come with so many different things that they put up walls of resistance. They've had negative experiences with adults in the past that quite frankly, and sometimes are traumatic. And so it can create issues for them in really opening themselves up to you. So we have these toolkits. We teach a principle called surrendering the one up. And really, at its core, surrendering the one up is finding simple ways to be vulnerable with your students as an invitation for them to be vulnerable with you. And it's really an awesome concept that we'd love to dive into. If you check out our webinars at ytri.org, we have several where we dive deep into surrendering the one up. But I want to end with this slide really quickly. And this is just something all of us can do. You don't need a toolkit, but it is a great way of improving your relationships with the students you work with. And when you look at trauma and what happens to students who experience trauma and the effects that that trauma has on their brain, the best way that we can prevent and repair those effects is by really building a positive connection with them. They need a positive connection with an adult. Here are 5 very easy ways that you can work with your students to build that connection, and then use that connection and use that relationship to address behavior, to address motivation. Find ways to celebrate your students. Find ways to comfort them, right? And one of the best ways to comfort your students is just to remain calm yourself, even in the face of some pressure moments. Listen to them, collaborate with them, and then inspire them with new ideas. And this can be a great way of working with your students and building that relationship. I want to thank you all for coming today. A lot of times people ask for our slides. We don't hand out the slides of these presentations, but what we do offer, if you scan this QR code, we'll take you to a page where you can access several free resources. We have some free sample lesson plans that walks through using a visual metaphor and kind of gives you some practice in doing that. We have a parent's guide to resilience that you can use and share with the parents of the students that you work with. And in this page, there's also a place you can sign up for a demo with me. If you go through a demo where I show you any of those toolkits, Christian is offered and will give out a digital copy of his book, The Resilience Breakthrough. Fantastic book. I have stories about this book. 3 personal stories about this book and how it impacts people outside of my job here at YTRI. And so it's an awesome book. I encourage you to do this.
Great.
Yeah,
Can I add one
Kristen.
thing when you got a chance?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I just want to say something. I don't normally do this, but this is a unique thing to be on here with Corey. Corey, again, has been an educator, an administrator. He's been a national consultant. You guys, I'm telling you right now, you can, for free, you can jump on the phone and consult with him on whatever issues you're dealing with around student motivation, behavior, relationships, academics even. He's worn a lot of hats. So he might get mad at this as far as just being able to jump on and use him a little bit as a consultant. He's a national consultant. And if you're on this webinar, and I'm telling you, I pay him. So I'm saying anybody there can jump on with him and just, you can bounce different issues you're dealing with in your district, get feedback from him. He's an incredible, incredible national consultant. And so anyway, just want to plant that seed. You might kill me for doing that, Corey, but I'm like, hey, they should take advantage of you, man. This is a unique situation. And I don't do that with all the reps. We have
I was going to say, to be honest, I've never heard
dude,
Christian say this before.
yeah, I don't
So
normally
please.
do that. That's a free consultant right there. And so I would take advantage of that. So I really do encourage that. And so
I don't know where that inspiration came from, Christian, but
I don't
okay.
know, but I'm like, hey, you're a resource. And right now, man, the mental health crisis, the challenges we're
True.
seeing in schools, I think, I think sometimes we do this and we overlook kind of talk. We get so focused on the program stuff, we overlook, hey, what this is really about. Pick up that phone and call Corey and just talk to him about whatever you guys need. He's the real deal. He will solve your problems. No pressure on you, Corey.
Okay. Let's lower the
I
expectation.
know.
I'm just kidding. Hey, Christian, thank you. I appreciate that. And for all of you who attended today, thank you so much for attending. Feel free, when I send you a link to this video, if you found this powerful and you have a colleague who you think would benefit from watching this, feel free to pass that link forward and they can watch this webinar and learn a little bit there as well, hopefully as well. But anyway, I'm going to put on some music, some play out music, and we're done for the day.
Yeah, if you have any